Welcome to Turning Back the Pages, the podcast where children's book authors discuss their favorite childhood books. I'm your host, Allie. Today, author Jenn Bailey is joining me to discuss her favorite childhood book, The Hobbit. Jenn Bailey is an award-winning author who has her MFA in Writing for Children and Young Adults from the Vermont College of Fine Arts. Her work has received the ALA Schneider Family Honor Award, Bank Street Book of the Year Award, been star-reviewed by Kirkus, The Hornbook, and Publishers Weekly, and been included in numerous state reading lists, among other accolades. Jenn is a frequent guest lecturer and workshop leader for SCBWI, Heartland Writers for Kids and Teens, the one-year adventure novel workshops. Jenn is published by Chronicle Books, Arcadia Press, Magic Cat Publishing, Little Brown and Company, and Levine Querido, and is represented by Erica Silverman with the Stimola Literary Agency. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you so much for having me, Allie. I'm really excited about this. When your email hit my email box, I was like, oh my gosh, how can I pick just one? But I'm excited to talk about this one.
And you chose The Hobbit, which was lucky because I was reading it for the very first time when we first were emailing.
Which is amazing on so many levels. First of all, that you got where you're grown and you hadn't read The Hobbit.
I know. And what's crazier is I went to a classical high school, like a classical education, and we read all the time. Like I remember my friends reading The Hobbit. I remember my dad talking about The Hobbit. I mean, it was around me, and I don't know how I made it to 30 set, and I'm just now reading it, but somehow that happened, and I read it, and I loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad you loved it. Yeah, it definitely was formative in my childhood.
Yeah, so see, I read more Lewis growing up. I had a very Lewis childhood. I think I read all of him. He was more formative for me, and Tolkien has been what I've read as an adult.
And I did the reverse. Isn't that
Okay.
interesting? Like when you grew up, you were either a Munsters family or a Adams family family.
Mhm.
Right? You were like you, and I think, and we were a Tolkien family. And I didn't read C.S. Lewis until I hit college. So
Wow. I think I've told the story before on this podcast. When I was little, I read Magician's Nephew, or I guess someone read Magician's Nephew to me, and I had to have been pretty little, but it sunk down so deep into my bones that I started playing Magician's Nephew, and then I read it again for myself when I was in about middle school. And when I read it, I was like, wait a minute. I wrote this. Like it had sunk down that deep into my bones.
I love that. And that is the power, right? That is the power of these books that we read as children. I was listening to a talk by Linda Sue Park, that fabulous Newbery author, and she said when you ask somebody what their favorite book is, they will invariably give you a book they read when they were a child. They absolutely know a book they read when they were a kid. And if you ask them, well, what was your favorite book you read last year? They probably can't tell you. But these books, they hold on to us. And so this is why I love what I do, writing for kids and meeting other children's authors. We're starting them young, right? we
Yes.
got to we got to get them hooked on it early.
Now we have to do our recap challenge. So, Jen, if you will start, I have 1 minute on the clock for you to recap The Hobbit.
Okay, so it's a story that opens up in the Shire with a hobbit called Bilbo Baggins, and he lives in a lovely hole, not a dirty mucky hole, but a lovely sandy hole. And he likes his comforts. He likes his pipe and his food and his warm chair and his fire. And he gets sent off on an adventure. He doesn't actually choose it so much as he kind of falls into it. And he's going on this adventure with all of these dwarves, 13 dwarves, and they're going to the Lonely Mountain where there is a dragon who is hanging over the hoard of treasure that the dwarves in their heritage had mined, and they'd made a whole wonderful town, and I hope I'm in time. And so they want to get the treasure back from Smaug the dragon, and they need Bilbo, that's our Hobbit hero, because the wizard Gandalf has said, oh, he's a thief. He'll take care of it for you. And so it's their adventures getting to the mountain, their adventures battling the dragon, and their adventures in reclaiming all the gold. And then Bilbo gets to go back to his lovely Hobbit hole at the end.
Perfect timing and perfect recap. That was fantastic. I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock for me, and I promise it won't be nearly as good as Jen's. We start out meeting Bilbo Baggins, someone I grew up hearing about and now have finally met and love. We start at his Hobbit hole. He is a homebody and he does not want to leave home. But then all these dwarfs come along with Gandalf to his hobbit hole and take him on an adventure to a mountain to reclaim the dwarfs' home. Each chapter reads as very episodic, an own little adventure. I really enjoyed when Bilbo, when he finds the ring and he has to go into a battle of riddles with Gollum in order to get away. So that was fun for me as one who has only now recently read some of the books, but had seen the movie and was so familiar with that story. Bilbo does make it back home. Now our trilogy can soon begin. All right. I have a summary of Tolkien's life, and I have to admit that this was quite intimidating from a man who is so beloved and so well written about. This is in no way exhaustive, but I have chosen some things I thought were interesting to talk about. J.R.R. Tolkien was born in South Africa on January 3rd, 1892. Do you know what J.R.R. stands for?
Oh my gosh. See, I knew at one point in time, is John? Is it John? Just start John. That's horrible. And I was going to make sure that I knew that. And then I got distracted. Um, so what are the R's?
It stands for John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. His family called him Ronald.
That's sad.
Yeah, every time that I read in his biographies anything about Ronald, I was like, wait, who's Ronald? Oh, yeah. When he was 3, Tolkien traveled with his mother and younger brother to England to visit family. However, while they were gone, Arthur Reuel Tolkien, Tolkien's dad, died of rheumatic fever before he could join his family. With no income, his widow moved in with family in Birmingham. As Ronald grew, he enjoyed reading and writing and learning Latin, which comes into play later in his life. Some of his favorite authors as a child. Well, do you know some of his favorite authors as a child?
I don't. I know that he was a contemporary of Lewis. They were friends.
Mhm. And Lewis both were actually heavily influenced by George MacDonald.
Oh,
But yeah, it was George MacDonald and Andrew Lang, who both were fantasy and fairy story authors. A biographer said of Tolkien, he was pleased by the Curdie books of George MacDonald, which were set in a remote kingdom where misshapen and malevolent goblins lurked beneath the mountains. Unfortunately, when Ronald was 12, his mother died of acute diabetes, living as long as she could without treatment. As a teen, Tolkien created several other languages, even writing stories in other fictional languages, which tells me he must have had a mastery of these languages because that does not seem like a small feat. It
yeah,
really,
he was impressive. He was an impressive linguist, and it's to understand the semantics and how language itself is formed. Yeah, he was an interesting man.
he met Edith, who he would later marry when he was 16, but they did not marry for many years, which is its own fascinating story within itself that I just don't have time for today. He enlisted in the army after he finished his studies. While at war, Tolkien created a dot code to evade the British Army's postal censorship so that he could tell Edith where he was and what was happening. After the war, Tolkien's first job was at the Oxford English Dictionary. He wrote about the etymology of words beginning with W with Germanic origin. In 1920, he became a reader at the University of Leeds, becoming the youngest professor at the time. While at Leeds, he wrote a Middle English vocabulary and finalized edition of Sir Gawain the Green Knight with E.V. Gordon. In 1925, he returned to Oxford as a professor and also had a fellowship at Pembroke College. While at Pembroke, he wrote some of his most famous works: The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Two Towers. The Hobbit grew out of stories he told his children as bedtime stories. Tolkien was friends with one of my favorite authors, as we already said, C.S. Lewis, and they were in a writing society club together known as the Inklings. And I'm drinking out of my Inklings mug today.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It has all their signatures on the back.
Oh,
There's so much more that I have left out that I would love to talk about, but for the sake of time, we must move on. So, Jen, please tell me, why did you choose The Hobbit?
because there are so many books that I loved as a kid, but I think that this one, um, it just introduced me to a different way of telling a story and to a different world of story. So, very precocious reader. My family are all of my family avid readers. So I was immersed in stories from a very young age, oral stories, family told stories as well as books. And when I was about 9, my brother handed me The Hobbit. he's the reason. And I cracked it open, and absolutely fell in love with this world, fell in love with what was possible. I love in this story when you talked about meeting Gollum, that chapter of riddles in the dark, these riddles, these mysteries that are happening. There's this light touch of magic, but magic isn't there to solve anything or to do anything. It really is by your wits. And I was not reading contemporary things. I was really into animal stories like Black Beauty and the Black Stallion and The Incredible Journey, things like this. And so to have this world of fantasy opened in front of me, and I think that I attach myself to Bilbo too, because I'm the youngest of 3, and my brother and sister, older and tall, and I'm only 5'3". And I've always been rather small in my house. And so here was Bilbo, this
Uh-huh.
small hobbit who was among dwarves and men, and kind of had to make his way. And sometimes, when big discussions of when the men or the elves were speaking, he'd just fall asleep. I mean, I guess I really connected with Bilbo a lot, kind of liking my comforts, but up for an adventure if it came. And as I said, and just to open up the world of fantasy, I became an avid fantasy reader after these books. Although I will tell you, I read for many years, I mean, into college, I read these books, The Hobbit and then the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, every year.
Oh, wow.
And then I had the dictionary, a guide to medieval Earth, and then I read the Silmarillion. I mean, it really was was something that really took me over, in a way.
What other fantasy books do you enjoy?
Well, I got into dragons because of Smaug. So the Anne McCaffrey Dragons of Pern series, one that I absolutely loved. Reread, numerous times. I got into the Belgariad, and as I said, it took me a while before I was introduced to C.S. Lewis. I mean, I knew it was out there, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, for sure. But I would say, fantasy led me into science fiction, led me into all these ways of telling stories in other ways other than contemporary books. I didn't really have a fondness for until I got older, and then I usually liked to like a mystery or something along those lines. It's like a straight up contemporary, this is life. It's like, no, I'm living that. I don't want to live that. Or do this. But there was one that I remember from my childhood as well, or from teen years, The Forgotten Beasts of Eld, which I can't remember the woman who wrote it, but that one had truly captured my brain too, with these fantastical creatures that are so wise. And I just love that. It lent itself to me loving those animal stories from when I was a child, and
Right.
then getting into this whole other world.
How has reading The Hobbit changed through the years?
Oh, that is a great question. So as I said in the beginning, I very much connected
Mhm.
Bilbo, and just loved the play of the language that it was the opening when all those dwarves show up and they all have different colored hoods and their names are like Biff or Buff or Bumber and Feely and Keely, and it was that just was so exciting. And to tell you the truth, the end of the book for me when I was a child, like when the war happens, it was like, I don't care about that part. And I'm really kind of surprised Peter Jackson was able to make a whole movie out of it. I mean, it's one chapter, kind of, but so there were parts of this book that totally stuck with me. Being in Mirkwood is so dark and mysterious, and the spiders, um,
Mhm.
and then as reading it more as an adult, it's like I got to really enjoy the chapters with Bjorn, the half man, half bear, and thinking about what that is like. And he's like the first time I'd ever really heard of somebody being like a vegetarian, you know, where he's only eating honey and things, and just and I don't know. I mean, it's like the relationships that Bilbo's able to have, and
Mhm.
the different cultures that he's able to interact with and to be with and still be himself. That became more of it as I became an adult, of just how do you manage when you're out having an adventure and you're not among things that are comfortable for you, but you can still find ways to connect.
I was just gonna say, when you were talking about the beginning when all the dwarfs show up, one thing that struck me when I read this, The Hobbit, but also when I read Lord of the Rings, was just how funny the hobbits are. I don't know what I expected, but I did expect them to be funny. But I mean, everything from the wordplay to just the way that Bilbo acts, like I really found all of it so funny, and that was surprising to me, and I really enjoyed that aspect of both those books.
Oh, it's there's these lovely, now as an adult, you can see them more too, these nods to British class and British culture.
Hmm.
Especially when he comes back to find, what is it, Ludwella Baggins is trying to steal his silver spoons, and they're selling all of his belongings. And it's like, oh my gosh. And it's just this lovely, like, he just hides from them. In, I think it's in the Fellowship of the Ring in the beginning, he's just hiding from his relatives because he doesn't want to have to deal with them. And so reading it as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, I've been to that party. Yeah.
Absolutely. As a child, what stood out to you, and why do you think it stood out to you?
Well, truly the meeting with Gollum, it's one brief chapter, and it really is kind of early in the book. I was surprised when
Hmm.
I look back at how early Riddles in the Dark was. But I remember trying to answer those riddles before the characters did, and just being fascinated by the thought that here was a whole other way to play a game. I mean, my
Hmm.
family's also really big game players. Um, and to be able to show something without showing it, the poetry in the book, even as a child,
Hmm.
loved it. So I started writing very bad poetry.
As we all do at some point.
But just as I said, these hints about what could be possible, the fact that the key to getting into the Misty Mountain was that moonwriting, and that it was very clever moonwriting. It wasn't just that you had to see it with moonlight on it, but it had to be the same time, the same season, and the same shape of moon. And
Hmm.
that, like, I remember that blowing my mind and me thinking, can I do that? If I write this note, on a midsummer's night and it's a crescent moon, will it disappear? And I mean, it just opened up so much. And so those were the things, those elements of wonder, I would have to say, that really stuck with me.
What is your favorite part?
Oh, see, that's so hard. I probably would have to say when he meets Gollum. When I saw the movie, I saw it with my kids, and I'd read this book to my children. They've all read it. And we went to see the movie and like the midnight opening, all that kind of thing. And when he's lost and we know Gollum's coming, I am like squeezing their hands. I'm like, it's like, this is it. This is the moment. To me, it is the story. And I guess because having read the trilogy, then we know what happens from but even as in my first readings, that was such a special moment where we get to see Bilbo, who so far has been kind of hapless. He's kind of being dragged along, and we get to see how capable he really is. And not as a fighter, not obviously not as a magician or anything, but just through his wits and through his just be able to do something. So that's probably my favorite part.
That was definitely my favorite part, and I realized that I was holding my breath as I was reading it, and it was one of those like, "Oh my goodness, is he going to make it?" And of course, he makes it because he's in the Lord of the Rings, but is he going to make it?
Is it good? And I mean, and he does cheat. Let's face it, he cheats.
Yes.
It's not his fault he cheated. I mean, he was just trying to come up with something, and he does give Gollum 3 guesses. So, he's not unreasonable. But there was kind of that part to it too that I don't know, as the youngest small child among this boisterous and wonderful family, and my extended family likewise, it was kind of nice to see this small little guy do something great.
Yeah. Who was your favorite character?
Oh, obviously I adore Bilbo, but Balin, the older dwarf, I really appreciated him, how he looked out for Bilbo. I mean, the others were kind of like, okay, we've hired him, he's going to do the thing. Feely and Keely are fun because they're the young ones at like 157, whatever it is. But Balin is really an interesting character to me, and I like how we then, because I believe Gimli in the Lord of the Rings is his descendant. And so that's kind of lovely too.
So obviously these are movies. They've been made into movies. So are you a fan of the movies?
I am, because I think that Peter Jackson did a phenomenal job. I will say my sole criticism of the Lord of the Rings is that he didn't end it the way that Tolkien did with the raising of the Shire, which I felt was an incredibly important part of the books. I think that it's something that Tolkien was, he'd just come back from a world war, and he had things he needed to say. And so it is sad that that Jackson didn't think that he could include that, because I felt that that's when the hobbits really came into their own. They'd been out in the wide world, they'd learned things, and they got to demonstrate that. But I get it, right? We were going to have a 4th movie, and The Hobbit, I think, could have been done in 2. I really don't think we needed all of the battles. I mean, yeah, okay. I know you got into it, and with the riding of the Rohirrim and all of this other stuff in the other movies. I don't think that's what this story was so much about. And I think that this is really a more intimate tale of one character discovering something about themselves and seeing a bit of the world, and yet still able to come home. He doesn't quite fit in that hobbit hole the same way he used to, but he's the better for it.
Would you recast any of the characters?
This may be controversial. I would not.
Ah, okay, explain.
I think Martin Freeman was an inspired choice. I think he is a fantastic actor. I have always loved his work from early days when he was in The Office. And I think that what you needed, Martin Freeman is an actor. He's an actor's actor, I think. He can become any character, and he disappears into the role. He's not a movie star. Putting a movie star in as Bilbo Baggins would not have worked, because no. Yeah. So Martin comes in, he's got an interesting face. He knows how to take on the role, and he knows how to bring that character that was very well written to life. And so I think Martin Freeman was a fantastic choice. He totally captured that role. I can't see anybody else doing it. When I saw that in your list of questions, I really racked my brain. And it was like, nope,
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
I can see in the role other than him.
Before we transition to talking about your books, and you've already answered this question really, but were you an avid reader as a child?
I was a crazy reader as a child. We all were. I mean, and it seriously was like books in different rooms of the house, depending on where you were. You sat down in that room and you picked up that book that you left there. And my family was always handing each other books too,
Mhm.
which is, I think, absolutely wonderful. We still do it to this day. I remember when we had a family Christmas, and it was the first Christmas that my sister's husband was with us. And he just sat there and goes, another book, huh? That's what you get at Christmas. It's like you just hand out all the books, all the
Yeah.
books. So yeah, it was a lot of that sharing. And it was my brother really, he and I have very similar tastes.
Mhm.
Um, Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Oh,
Galaxy.
yeah, yeah, yes,
I
yes, I
mean,
heard.
we just, Connie Willis's books are phenomenal. So we just trade books still a lot to this day. And my dad and I were huge mystery fans. Uh,
Mhm.
he gave me, he handed me Sherlock Holmes when I was probably around 9 or 10. Like, yeah, and that was like, okay, giddy up, here we go. But it was that. It was like you were never really too young. My parents had a strong belief you could pick up anything and read anything. And if you had questions, let's talk about it. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Because as my mother said, she was like, you'll understand what you're capable of understanding, and what you don't, we can chat about, or you'll just not have any questions about it. It'll be fine.
Well, that's one of those things that kids can do. My oldest daughter and I have been reading the Harry Potter series, just the first two. I don't think she's ready for the rest yet, but she is almost 7, and we are in the second book, The Chamber of Secrets. And recently, I read the part to her where Tom Riddle has taken Harry into his diary, and and Harry is able to access the memories that Tom Riddle is giving him access to. And Harry and Riddle can talk back and forth to each other, but Harry can't interact with any of the other memories. And after reading this, half the time I'm not even sure that she's paying attention. But after we finished the book, she said, that really sounds like when Scrooge goes into the past in the Christmas Carol. And I just thought that was a really good thought for a 6-year-old, just based on the little bit of literature that she's already been exposed to.
I absolutely love that. I know because I do I'm an editor, and I do help developmental editing and stuff for other
Mhm.
authors. And I know that they'll ask sometimes, they'll be like, well, do you think a kid's going to get this? It's like a kid is aware.
Yes. Very.
A kid is absolutely aware. They're aware of everything that's going on. They might not have the same life skills to understand it all,
Mhm.
but they're still getting the feels from it.
Mhm.
They're still feeling the tension, or they're understanding this, and they're comparing it to things that they do comprehend, their own life experiences. So, yeah, I'm a firm believer in hiding things from children doesn't work. Think of
Right.
yourself as a child.
Yes.
you know,
Absolutely.
you knew those Christmas presents were there, and some kids opened them and some kids didn't. But it was like I think that to pretend it doesn't exist, it's a disservice to
Yes.
their
Absolutely.
intellect, and to helping them understand the wider world.
Tell me about all of your books.
Well, I have different ones.
Mhm.
I have one middle grade that's about ghosts. It's kind of it's fun be able to say it's a nonfiction, because it is. It's about actual ghost stories. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, that's up to you. But these are real stories. So,
Mhm.
and it's called the Ghostly Tales of Newport. I grew up in Rhode Island, which is small estate, yay, go Rhode Island. And Newport is one of our coastal cities there. So it's about the ghost stories of that time. I have a few other books, one in verse, which is Meowsterpieces, which is about taking famous works of art. And that I kind of call my backwards book. They had an illustrator who wanted to put cats in famous pieces of art instead of people. And they were like, but we need a story. And so they came to me and said, can you write a story to connect all of these? And so I kind of did, I think. And so you'll be exposed to true masterpieces and works of art. And then this cat who is a mother cat who is bringing her kittens throughout the masterpieces. So that's kind of fun. I have a Christmas story out there about called The 12 Hours of Christmas instead of the 12 days.
Okay.
Because what kid knows what a French hen is? I don't. And so this is more, what is it like? What is the family dynamic like? I came from a big extended family that always gets together at Christmas, and the illustrator, B. Jackson, drew her big extended family that always gets together at Christmas. It was a lovely match made in heaven, and there's a kitten you get to hunt for in that one. But what I'm best known for is my Henry books. And so a friend for Henry started us off. It's a picture book, and it won the ALA Schneider Honor Book in 2020. It's about a child who, it's never stated, and that's for reasons. He is on the autism spectrum, and he's trying to find a friend. And so it kind of follows his journey trying to find a friend. He's a quieter fellow. And then Chronicle, which I love them for this, said, hey, let's make him a chapter book series. And this would be considered a transitional book. It's when kids go from being read picture books to now reading on their own. And so he's in a chapter book series. And the first book is Henry Like Always. And that one won the Schneider Award and a Theodore Geisel Dr. Seuss Award, which I was really proud of. That he got that double honor. That was really special. And so that one's out. And let's see, in Henry Like Always, yeah, he's dealing with a calendar issue because changing the schedule is not always comfortable for anybody, let alone child on the spectrum. And then we move on to Henry and the Something New, which Henry and his class are going on a field trip, which has all of its own issues going on, because boy, wouldn't it be great to see those dinosaur skeletons, but boy, isn't it unnerving that we have to get on a bus and it's really loud and you're not with all of your classmates, you're with maybe a parent volunteer. All of that can be a little unnerving. The third one, which comes out in March, is called Henry's Picture Perfect Day. And it is picture day, and Henry has to wear a shirt that's too tight and too close. It's got stripes on it, and he has a loose tooth.
Oh man.
Yeah, so he's kind of like, I'm supposed to be perfect in this picture, but what happens if everything goes haywire? And so of course, everything goes haywire.
Who do you hope reads Henry's Picture Perfect Day?
Oh, I hope it's found or it will be finding its way into schools. And I get some lovely notes from people that this isn't just, about for a kid who's, as I said, who's on the spectrum. It's for a quiet kid. It's for an anxious kid. It's for any kid, actually, because he's got a multitude of friends in his classroom who I hope are as diverse as a normal classroom is. So I'm hoping that any child can, if they don't see themselves in Henry, they're going to see a friend who's like Henry, and they're probably going to find themselves in one of his classmates. So it really is a classroom adventure where these kids find themselves in situations and then they work together to get out of them.
Henry sounds like a character my oldest would really enjoy, not because she's on the spectrum or anything like that, but just transitions are hard and change is hard. And we have anxiety about new things because being a kid can be hard.
That's
So,
exactly it. It's like that. I wanted it for the quiet kid, the kid who has trouble making those friends, because that can be daunting. Let's face it, in a classroom, the kid who gets the attention is the kid who's out there, that extroverted kid who's either in a good way or not so great way, is claiming that attention. But there's an awful lot of kids in that class who also, deserve a little recognition. And I got to applaud teachers. I mean, they've been through it, haven't they, since the
Oh my
well,
goodness.
with the pandemic and everything. And I applaud them. The fact they show up every day.
Yes.
Oh,
Pay
thank you.
teachers
Thank you.
more. Anyone listening, pay teachers more.
Yes, please pay them more. I mean, we're not even paying them half what they're owed, what we expect them to do. And wow.
Yes.
So I hope that these in some way help. I do keep teachers in mind. I have educators in my family, so I do try to keep those teachers in mind. Mrs. Tanaka is a wonderful teacher.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here. I will share in the show notes where people can find you and buy your books.
Thank you so much, Allie. I really appreciated this chat. I could talk forever about it.
Me too. This was really fun. Thank you for listening to this episode of Turning Back the Pages. If you have any author suggestions, you can follow me on Instagram at whatallywrites or email me at whatallywrites@gmail.com. Allie is ALLY. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen.